If you're new to sourdough, this video will walk you through the basics of how a sourdough starter works before you start mixing the flour and water. I planned to make a video like this sooner, and I wanted to do it through the whole steps of making starter from scratch, but I decided that would be a waste of flour and it would be better use of my time to just give one video having to do with starter and giving you all the resources and some basic information. So instead of starting a brand new starter from scratch, I'm going to explain this process using an established starter to help reduce waste and remove unnecessary stress for beginners. We'll cover what's normal, common concerns, what hooch is, and when a starter is actually ready to bake with. I bake and sold sourdough for several years, including at farmers markets, and my goal is to help beginners understand sourdough clearly and confidently without perfectionism. I've met some of my own goals when it comes to baking sourdough, including winning some awards and competitions, and it's helped me to gain experience and knowledge to help teach others, and that's where I feel like I'm at in my sourdough journey now. In this video, you'll learn how sourdough starter works, what's normal, and we'll talk about hooch and when starter's ready to use, and the benefits of reducing flour waste. Also, in the About section, I'm going to include some links for starter recipes if that's the direction you want to go. I also offer free starter, so in-person free starter, so if you want that, let me know. It's a totally different story, but this is for people that want to start starter from scratch. I also, in this video, have shown some of my bread from the beginning to kind of show what my journey has been since the beginning of my sourdough process. So, if you're brand new to sourdough, this is meant to be a calm starting point and a bit of information to help encourage you to get started. So, sourdough starter is developed over several days by combining flour and water and allowing natural fermentation to occur. Begin by mixing in flour and water in a clean jar. As you can see, with my starter, there is like some crusty edges and stuff along the side. An established starter, the edges and all that dried stuff is still active starter, so it's not as big of a deal to keep your jar not as clean. Just every so often clean it out, and it's not too big of a deal. So in the beginning especially, you're going to keep the starter in a clean jar and keep it loosely covered in a warm environment. Some people will keep it in an oven with the light on, which I did in the beginning, but you risk baking your starter, so there's other options such as putting it in a microwave, keeping it near an oven, but it can be difficult, especially in the wintertime, to keep it warm enough. Check for daily signs of activity such as bubbles, changes in texture, and aroma. Each day, discard a portion of the starter and feed it with fresh flour and water. Continue this daily feeding process to build strength and consistency. Some of the recipes are a little bit more specific on feeding schedules to create results faster, so I highly recommend just following a recipe, following it step by step, and I'll give you resources for that if that's what you want to do. I may not have all those resources up today. I might take a little bit of time to make sure I have plenty there for you, but for now, just kind of take this video in and think about what you want to do and start to get the materials that you need, such as wheat flour, regular bread flour, and a scale and jars and things like that. So in the early days, it's normal for the starter to appear inactive, but it can kind of give you a false active look as well, where you'll see the bubbles and think, oh, maybe my starter's ready, but it's not ready until probably at least 10 days, and it can pass a float test. So you'll see with my starter how it's kind of little chunks of it kind of float to the top whenever I'm making sourdough. That's what it's supposed to look like. So And that's part of the reason why I'm making these videos, just showing me making bread so that you can see what the process is supposed to look like and give you confidence when you're ready to start yourself. But number one important thing that you're going to need is a scale, because all that practice in the beginning, practicing measuring, scaling out, and all that stuff is going to give you the experience you need whenever you are making bread. And not everybody thinks you have to do all this to make sourdough. They didn't have it in the old days, but I just find it's easier to provide more consistent results, especially because sourdough can be a little complicated in the beginning if you don't know what you're looking for and everything. I think that if you want to do this more by feel, you kind of have to have a lot more experience on what it's supposed to look like and feel like. And I also think you can possibly have a lot more waste with your starter if you're just doing it by estimations. So anyway, starter is ready when it was active, when it smells basically like bread. And in the beginning, it can be very stinky, almost like a stinky wet sock. So just push through that time period. It's just the hooch. And I will send a King Arthur link that shows kind of the process of what hooch looks like, what's normal, and everything. It's all just part of the process, and you do not want to use that discard for cooking because it is not safe. You have to wait until your starter is healthy and active. When you're new to sourdough, the main goal is just building a strong starter, not baking the perfect bread right away. And I cannot emphasize this enough because it's so easy to get disappointed in the beginning when your bread isn't turning out the way that you want it to, and it's totally fine. You just need practice. And in my next video, I'm going to give some tips and pointers for being in the beginning of the sourdough baking process and to not get discouraged and to just keep going, because you will get to the point where it just becomes almost second nature to you. It may just be a little intimidating in the beginning. So new starters need regular feedings. You'll need to be feeding your starter every day. And so that's why becoming familiar with some really easy discard recipes is going to be important in the beginning. So we'll be talking about that in the next video, which probably won't be for a couple weeks, but I want just the whole starter stuff to just, anyone that wants to do this, I want that to just soak in for a couple weeks, and if you have questions and everything like that. So it's important to manage your expectations because your results may not match those of experienced bakers. Some people get beginner's luck, but anyway, this is what my bread looked like at the end.